So if you want to start vectoring, there are a couple tools you need to be familiar with. Otherwise, you won't have any idea what you're doing when you're vectoring. The first tool, most important, is video. If you're doing a vector trace, you need something to trace from. In most cases, people use YouTube. You just go through an episode, choose, I don't know, maybe Applejack sweating here, or Rainbow Dash. Choose that, print screen, open up Photoshop, paste it in, blow it up. Something like that. Preferably, though, you would want to use something like VLC. Now, I say VLC because you can slow it down. You can go playback slower and press play, and it'll start playing it really slowly, very slowly. So, in this case, if you pause it here, you can see Twilight there. We're going to print the screen this. Print screen will solve all your problems. Print screen that. Go ahead and paste it in to Photoshop. Blow it up. Blow it up big time. I mean, in theory, your image would not be 3,000 pixels wide, but you get the idea. You'd want to paste, file, new, and clipboard. And then you'd paste it, crop it in, really rough crop here. Like that, zoom in, and there's your Twilight Sparkle. Now, that's out of Photoshop. Inside of Photoshop, or Inkscape or whatever, you've got a series of tools you need to learn about. The first one, most important, is the pen tool over here. It's inside this series of tools here, which are all vector kind of tools. You got the type tool, the point path selection tool, and the shapes tool over here. The first one is the pen tool. Now in Inkscape they call it the I think it looks like a pen, and it's called the Draw Anchor Points and Bezier Curves tool. I'm not sure what like I said, we're using Photoshop here. If you want to go to Inkscape, we have people on their subreddit, r/MLPvectors, who know more about Inkscape than I do. So the pen tool is the vector tool. You use this to make the vectors. Like that, like so. But what are these things I'm doing here? So first things first. If I click, a point comes up. This is called an anchor point. This thing here. And anchor points act as points for the image to reference upon during resize. So if I change the image size, so let's say 2,000%, no, let's go 500%. You'll notice it sticks with the anchor points, but the pixels change inside to create a smoother shape there. But that's not all that's not all that the pen tool can do. Not only can it make anchor points, but you can also, if you click and drag, these two lines come out of the anchor point. Now what are these lines? These are called Bezier curves. These make curves. You see that? If you click and drag using the pen tool, you can make all sorts of funny shapes. Like, I guess this could be a whale if you want it to be. Doesn't matter. And you can make these by clicking and dragging. Now, this is really important when you're using this tool. Is if you click and drag, the direction you click and drag is really important, because, see, if I click and drag this way, the path will go this way. If I try to go this way, it'll screw it up, and I'll have to click and drag it this way. So if I click and drag this way, I can go this way, but I can't go that way. Well, I can, and it'll make a curve. Say like I want a straight line or something, an S. So Bezier curves are really important when you're vectoring ponies, because if you look here, in the stroke. What am I trying to do here? Here we go. If you look at these strokes here, you see these Bezier curves? They set the curve in the pony. And this is really important when you're trying to make ponies, because ponies are basically giant curves everywhere because of their outline. It's just a bunch of curves. So see here, these are really long. And the number one rule, I always say the number one rule when vectoring ponies is use as few anchor points as possible. We'll get into that later when we do strokes, the stroke episode. Right now this is just basic tools. So that's the pen tool with your anchor points and Bezier curves. And the shorter the Bezier curve lines are, the shorter the curve. I don't know how to describe it, but if I make it super long and I go like this, it'll make it a funny shape. It really depends on where like two Bezier curve lines intersect, and it'll make a kind of, I don't know, Fibonacci sequence thingy there. No, not Fibonacci. I don't know what I'm talking about. Next tool we're going to go over is the ellipse tool and the rectangle tool. The rectangle tool you won't be using a lot. It makes rectangles. Pretty simple. Ellipse tool is what we want to be talking about. Make sure you have it unconstrained up top here. So when you draw, you can make all sorts of circly type shapes, like ovals, real circles, if you press shift. We'll go into advanced commands later. So what you use the ellipse tool for is eyes. You can make a black one or a white one, then make a smaller one, and then copy that, make a smaller one, and there's a basic eye shape right there. So that's the ellipse tool. We'll go into that later when we talk about eyes. There are a couple more tools you need to learn about that aren't over here in the vectors area. They're over here in the layers channel. What these are your organization tools. Now, if you'll notice over here, I've got all this organization, and this is really important when you're making a vector, because a lot of times you'll have things overwrite each other, other things, and if you don't know how to use your organization properly, your vector could look terrible. But if you know how to use organization properly, it could come out looking perfect. Now, you have two different things over here. You have the layers, which will make a layer, which is a rasterized drawing surface. We won't be using those much, or at all. And then you have the groups. Groups are very important when you're making a vector. The way groups work is if you have... Oh, I didn't want that. I didn't want that either. A group on top of another group, it will overwrite anything on that top of the other group. So if I have this hat here, you see how it overwrites Twilight's hair? You can't see her hair now. But if I move it under Twilight, this group here, now her hair overwrites her hat. And this is very important, this overlaying, overwriting kind of thing. When we come to things like the ear or a hair here, I gotta stop doing that. And especially the eyelashes and the eyes and the fill. Groups are the number one tool for vectoring. It makes or breaks a vector. I'll put it that way. You can be a master at the pen tool. You can make cool shapes and everything, but it really comes down to how you group your vectors, your paths, I should say. So those are the main tools. Oh, one more thing I forgot to mention was the manipulating the anchor points. You have anchor points in Bezier curves, to manipulate them with Photoshop, press Control. If you press Control, you'll be manipulating both Bezier curves and the anchor point. Like you notice how both Bezier curves move when I press Control and click and manipulate the points. But if I press Alt, you'll notice this caret come up. See this caret? That means I'm only manipulating this side. Watch. I'm only manipulating this Bezier curve. You do not want to do this a lot when you're vectoring ponies, because this will make rough edges, as you can see, sharp corners, and ponies are not sharp corners. Except for hair. You see here? Oh, I've got a Bezier curve here that points directly in almost a 90-degree angle. That's because her hair is a sharp corner there. But everywhere else, you'll see I make smooth corners by having two anchor points with short Bezier curves. So those are your basic tools, really. Also, another tool you could want to use, DeviantArt. You can submit all your art here. Choose categories, upload, and of course, our subreddit, which will gladly help you with any vectoring if you have it. Just, submit your thing to DeviantArt or Imgur. Make sure it's a big file, and we'll help you out with anything you have questions with. So those are the basic tools of vectoring. Next episode, we'll be going over strokes, which are the first thing I do when I do a vector trace are the strokes. And I will go over those next time and how to do them, because a lot of times I notice when people get down here to the bottom of the hoof, it gets pretty pointy. Like they'll make a point here, and then they'll go like that, and it looks pretty bad. So we'll go over those next time. But for this episode, that's it. I'll see if I can get the stroke episode out today. Maybe, probably not. Thanks for watching, and visit our subreddit at MLPvectors. See ya.